Warning, this podcast may change the way you think about business, entrepreneurship, and money forever. The Conquistador Podcast was created for dreamers, entrepreneurs, and leaders who want to conquer their future. To be an epic entrepreneur, you must adopt the right mental paradigms as well as master the art of selling, marketing, and finance. Now, it's time to welcome two serial entrepreneurs, leaders, husbands, and fathers who are passionate about sharing the strategies that are helping them excel in life and in business. Here are Mauricio Garcia and Hubert Humphrey.
All right, we are live once again. I hope everybody is having an amazing day. My name is Mauricio Garcia. Excited to be here again with my mentor, my friend, my partner, Hubert Humphrey. Hubert, how are you?
Doing great. Good to be with you.
Awesome. Well, listen, today I think we had a great podcast yesterday talking about the importance of having a recruiter's mentality, right? To build something big, you've got to be able to have a recruiter's mentality. But next to that is having a builder's mindset. You could recruit a lot of people, but you're not going to build anything of significance if you don't have the builder's mindset. And I know you've been using these principles for the last 30 years, 40 years, and you've built some monstrous companies. And let's talk about that. What is a builder's mindset to get started here?
Well, a builder's mindset means that you're going to take you're going to take a vision of something that you want to construct, a building or a team or whatever it is, and it's got to be built 3 times. It's got to be built in somebody's mind. Somebody's got to have built out the whole thing in their mind. They see it. So it's like we talk about Thomas Watson and the IBM story. You got to see the end in mind, and so you got to see it. Then you got to get a building architect or somebody that can take from your mind and build it on paper. And then it goes about the building that we're talking about. It's more in the construction of it. And there's got to be an orderly, systematic plan. And if you're going to build a building, you don't build starting with the roof. You start at the foundation. And then you go up with the walls. And then you go through, and then you end up with a roof on top. So, I mean, there's an orderly flow to building. And to build, you got to have raw material. A systematic flow of raw materials got to come in. You got to have the financing in place to cover you some line of cash flow from a bank or something until you as the building contractor can get the building or the home or whatever built, and one day be able to go and sell it and be able to get the profits plus your returns back. You got to be able to, in the meantime, you got to live. Your team, your subcontractors, your roofers, your painters, all the construction personnel have got to be paid off, and the vendors that you're buying raw material from. So a builder's got to have a system whereby all of that occurs as a building contractor. And in our business, the business that I'm in, we the same thing. We need to start with like we were building a distribution team. I knew how big I wanted the team to be at that particular phase. And I said, man, how many prospects am I going to have? How many people are we going to have to contact? How many recruits are we going to have to get in? How many meetings am I going to have to hold? How much training we have to do? How many leaders am I going to have to develop that can help me be field trainers that can match up with me and help me keep this thing going? And then how many personal sales and how many team sales are going to have to be made? How much override am I going to have to be making all along to make sure there's enough cash flow? Instead of going to some bank and get a line of credit, we happen to be in financial services where as we market products, as we sell who we recruit, sell who we don't recruit, as we go through that process, the carriers, the insurance companies who advance us money off of the deal. And literally the clients become the co-signers on our little so-called insurance applications, which are acting like loans. So we keep enough cash flow to going while we're constructing the business. So to have a builder's mindset, you've got to think on the big picture of how you're trying to build something. You don't just it's not like a little tinker toy set that you're just going to go out and open up a box and construct something.
Yeah.
You got to have an orderly flow to it, and a systematic approach is how you become a builder.
I like that. When somebody goes in business, they're always taught that they have to create some sort of a business plan. Well, this is in a way a business plan. Having a builder's mindset is knowing exactly what you're going to do, what you're willing to give up to build what you want to build, right? You just mentioned, how many recruits, how many events. So it's just begin to do a lot of the possibility projections and putting it on paper, executing on that, and just trying to, all these efforts compounding into building what your vision is. And if you could put it on paper, it means it's possible.
All right, so yeah, we've got to dream it. We've got to be our own architect that can reduce it to a business plan, and with all the steps in it. And then we've got to go out there and be a do-it-first leader to make it happen, to create the cash flow, to build the recruiters, and to build a team, and to run the system. So in any kind of business, you got to do something similar to what I said here, and to sync it up in the right perspective. My philosophy in building these big companies we've built in the past, these successful distribution teams, and help billions and billions of dollars of wealth to consumers, and literally several $1 billion of wealth to the entrepreneurs who came in and built their teams with us back in the past and now and in the future.
Yeah.
Was that there was three steps to it. There was the recruiter's mentality, which we talked about yesterday a little bit. There's the builder's mindset that comes, and then there's the director of motivation, which we'll talk about later in the week. And it's literally those three things: recruiter's mentality, builder's mindset, and director of motivation. Because once you get a distribution team built, now you got to move it. Now you got to keep it moving. Now you got to keep its vision stretched and keep the energy and recognition and motivation, all that kind of stuff we'll talk about. So it's a process of a 3-step process, and the builder's mindset is just taking the raw material that you get recruiting is nothing but the procurement of raw material. That's if I was a building contractor, and I want to build a big building or big home. I've done all this other stuff, but I've got to find out where the local building supply center is, and I've got to make sure that they have on hand the supplies that I need, and they can bring it out and just stack it up out there on the building site and get me the raw material. So when I get ready to have the builder's mindset, I've got the materials to go and construct the building with, to build it with.
Yeah.
And so raw material recruiting is getting raw material. You're not building anything, you're just getting raw material in. That's why you now got to build. Like even if you're bringing some people into your internal team, you're recruiting some people internally to help run your staff. You don't have anything but just some people. You've got to go and build them into efficient employees, efficient assistants. Then in the field, if you're bringing people into your business to help build your distribution team out there, you've got to go and you not only got to procure them, but you got to go and develop them and train them and get them going. So the building is not so much the construction sometimes of a team. It's the empowering of them, converting that raw material into a productive person, building them into a productive person is what you're trying to do.
Yeah, so I hear two different things. So on the one side is, building it, putting it on paper, and then going out there and actually make it happen. And I know that, because I heard you say something like this in the previous podcast, that it's actually in the Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which is you've got to have total clarity. What are you willing to give in return for this thing you're trying to build? Because a lot of us, sometimes we make a nice, we make a nice business plan and we put all these numbers and we have this vision, but then when it comes to what are you willing to put in, we're not willing to make those sacrifices, right? Not willing to do these things that is required. I wanted you to talk a little bit more about that, because I believe a lot of the entrepreneurs, people in business, have a hard time really giving up like old habits, or giving, or even putting in, the amount of resources, and not just financially, but also the personal resources into it.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things you just mentioned, you start, number one, with a clear, concise mental picture of what you what you want to accomplish. It's got to be a very clear picture. Then number two, you got to know the price are you willing to pay? How much is it going to cost? And not only money, but in our business, it's more of how much of your time, how much of your efforts, and so forth. It's got a price tag. And then number three, like you said, it's got to be a definite date by which you've got to get it, because time is of no value unless it's dammed up against a dam. That's what a calendar is, a deadline. You got to know the date by which you've got to have this done. That creates the urgency, which creates the energy to makes things happen, to get things built. And you got to be willing to change, make the changes. The hardest part is to change who you are. Sometimes is to change your thought process. First thing you got to do is you got to change your paradigm. If you can't get your paradigm changed, all the rest of this doesn't make any difference. If the reason why most people fail in business is a couple of reasons. One is they don't have a system to save them and to compensate for all the things that they don't have yet. But the other thing is that they don't ever get their paradigm straight. They keep the paradigm of an employee, and they're trying to boss themselves. They're trying to have their own business, and they're still trying to carry an employee or technician mentality or paradigm over into that world. And so you got to shift. You got to be a paradigm shifter.
Yeah. So in this case, we come in sometimes in business, and in your business, maybe a lot of people come in. In our business, people come in with a building already in their mind. I mean, utilizing the analogy of constructing a big building. It's like we already come in with the building. You're saying we got to break that down because we have to build ourselves before we can even build anything. Right? We have to rebuild mentally, paradigm-wise, build ourselves. Because part of building anything, if it's going to be with people, then you've got to also build them. And building leaders, what has your experience been? You've obviously have worked with hundreds of thousands of people directly, maybe millions of people. I would say, directly or indirectly, people hear your message. You're building leaders. How do you go about building a leader? To be able to build anything, first you got to build a leader, right?
Right.
How do you go about it?
A little later in the week, we're going to dive deeper into the building of leaders and everything. So we don't want to give them all of it today, but because that's one of the subjects later in the week. But I know that's really what when you start, if you got a builder's mindset, to begin with the end in mind, what is it you're trying to build? And in our case, it's building leaders, which will cause teams to come. And the best way to do anything in life is to build a master copy, a prototype, so to speak. You look at Ray Kroc as he was building McDonald's. He wanted to build a prototype. In fact, he up there where you live in Chicago, Oak Brook, Illinois. He went and built the prototype of the model he wanted other people to build. Every franchise that they've ever built in McDonald's, he was wanting it to follow that prototype of that little hamburger restaurant that he's opened up there. And that one it's still there today, and you get that perfect model, and then if anybody's going to become a franchise owner and operator with him, had to do what? They had to come to Hamburger University, Hamburger U. They had to come to Chicago. They had to come there and be trained and looked at and see. And one of the things was to go over and watch this model. And so the real, if you're looking at the real genesis, the real beginning of being a builder is you said it a while ago. You got to build yourself. You got to reconstruct yourself into the model. And in our business, businesses that I've been in over the years, all it was I went and built myself to be the kind of person that I wanted to replicate. I wanted to make sure that my master copy was worth duplicating. It was duplicatable and would for surely be duplicated. So I got myself to where I was the prototype of what I wanted to be. And then as I expanded it and had my own base shop and even had my own little field office when I was back in the days when I was aligned with A.L. Williams, I made sure my master copy could be duplicated. And I went and found those ambitious people, and then they could copy exactly what I did. And when I went into their area to talk to them, I just laid out what I did. They just did what I did. Then the other leaders would do what I did and what they did and what they did. So you get yourself as the perfect copy. Then it becomes just a replication. You're like a giant Xerox machine. You're just replicating copies of it over and over and over. That's all I've been doing for 40 years is replicating copies of that simple little model that I built in the field many years ago. And we've had thousands and thousands and millions of people have come through, and 30 or 40% of them have really done well in replicating that little simple model. So if you're going to be a builder, make sure that you've got your prototype. If you were going to build a car, if a company's going to build a new automobile, they spend fortunes with all their team of designers to go and create a prototype of what that car is going to look like.
Right.
Everything about it's a prototype. It's the If they're building an airplane, it's going to be a prototype of it. If it's whatever it is, it's got to be a prototype, and that's what you need to do. You be the perfect prototype in your model, and then now you're set to be a good builder because you've got something you're going to build on rock, not on sand. You got something that's doable, and you know that it'll work. If it'll work for you, then they go do it. It'll work for them. It's just a magic of compound getting people to build something that works, and just you're replicating that simple little model over and over and over again.
Now, in order to be able to build what you've done in the past, they had to have a simple system that a lot of people could follow. Otherwise, it couldn't scale that fast, that big. Would you be able to summarize that builder's system? Like what entails? What is that system in 8 filters in a nutshell that build such huge distribution channels?
Well,
because that's what you put on paper to simplify things.
Yeah. But the steps are so simple. All you got to do is just break down what are the steps that you've got to do to build this prototype, and just lay them out. Like in ours, it's prospecting number 1, then the approach contact number 2, where you're contacting them, trying to get them over to see an overview of their opportunity, and then subsequently a sales presentation. Number 3, you're going to have the actual presentation. Number 4, you're going to do a follow-up. Anybody that you talk to, have a meeting with, invite to a meeting, it's what you do after the fact. It's like a golf shot. It's what you do after you've hit the ball with your follow-through that determines literally where your ball goes. And so the follow-through is everything. And so step 4 is follow-up. Then of course that leads you over there to go through some filters. If somebody was at a meeting or somebody had you had a presentation with, the filter is real quickly. Did they stay after the meeting? Did they want you to stay there after you made the presentation, or did they try to leave? Number 2, did they take something from you to kind of study? Number 3, did they set up a little time to get started? Number 4, did they keep that appointment? So all that is what makes up the follow-up. Then step number 5 is the startup, where you start them up now. Now that they're ready to go, they want to get into your business, you got to have steps. And our filters are 5, 6, 7, and 8 are over there to give a definition of what a startup is. Now we're going to do their prospect list, and we're going to set up their goals. And number 7 is that we're going to do a little needs analysis on them. Remember I said we're going to sell who we recruit, we're going to sell who we don't recruit. They're going to become a client and of what they need. And then next we take filter 8 is we match them up and go off that prospect list they had and start getting them build a team. Go get them 3 recruits and start that process 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 5. And step number 6 is the duplication. So it's prospecting, contact, meeting, follow-up, startup, duplication. It's just a 6 simple little steps over and over again, and it's nothing complicated, but it's the systematic part of it. And in our business, we always put the word leader under every one of those 6 steps, because a leader has got to be taking a new person through the prospecting. It's going to be through the contact. A leader's going to be helping with a meeting. A leader's going to help them with a follow-up. A leader's going to help them start up. A leader's going to make sure it keeps duplicating over and over and over again with everybody. If one person comes in and they go out and get 3 recruits, we're going to get those 3 recruits right back through the system. And that 3 becomes 9, which becomes 27, which becomes 81, becomes 243, on and on and on. And it's just putting them through our system. And by being systematically doing it, it assures it makes it predictable. It makes it foolproof. It makes it profitable. It makes it makes it work. And if we take you want to take the randomness out of things, because if you don't have a system, and people are left to their own devices, like most sales companies do and most businesses do, and they don't really ever get as big as they should, is there's too much randomness in it. There's no system. Hey, Ray Kroc did not invent the hamburger business. He did not invent the French fry business. He did not invent the restaurant business. He did not even invent the franchise business. He just perfected a system to make it duplicatable and replicatable. That was so much better than everybody else, including the buying of the property and all that them leasing it out to the people. But the model of it, getting people to become franchise owners, was just a very simple thing. He had it so systematized. Henry Ford did not invent the automobile. It was invented long before him. He didn't invent plants, but he invented an automobile format system called an assembly line to mass produce it at low cost for the American people. Everybody could have a car, and that's what a system is supposed to do. Just the simple basic things that will cause the end product to be developed. Just everybody follows that step over and over and over. You don't do some here, some there, skip this, skip that.
No, and I as I hear you speak, I remember when I first got into the financial industry, these big multinational companies, as big as they are, have no system. You go in there, here's your product, got to go out and sell. Basically, there's no system. I'm speaking the largest financial companies in the world. It wasn't until I actually came and associated with you there that you actually have a predictable way of being able to do the things that will cause not just building a little agency or just becoming an agent, but actually building huge distribution. And the way you describe it with so much clarity is actually simple enough. And I wonder how many people listening to us now have their systems to the T, just like you're describing in your system. Because unless they have something like that, they would even dream of having, revolutionizing an industry, just like you did. So it has to be simple. I think Ray Kroc's system is not a complicated thing. It's a simple thing, but it's been perfected and is systematized and is used all the time. So is the system you've built. And that's what had led to building these huge distribution channels. So
let me say something about the system at a more elementary level. Obviously, if you're going to build a big team, a system, anything you're going to do, if it's systematic, you're better. That's why you want, if you're going to do physical fitness, you want to get somebody that's got a system and you copy and do exactly what they tell you to do, or have a trainer live or through virtually or whatever. Somebody's going to tell you what to do, and you go do it over and over. It's the rapid, relentless repetition of these 6 simple steps that we talked about that makes the system powerful. If it's not rapid and it's not relentless and it's not repeated over and over and over again, then you don't have the compounding effect, and the system didn't bear the fruit that it should have. But let me tell you, when I was working on the railroad. I'd never really been in business. I'd never been in insurance. I'd never been a salesperson per se. I tried Amway and a few other things like that on the side, but I was not what you would call a professional sales guy. I didn't know much about that. But when I first got into A.L. Williams at its very beginning, and before I could start recruiting, they just didn't even have a recruiting system. I'm the one that brought the recruiting system into that company. I didn't have one to follow. I had to bring it with me. So I had to go in and do what they were doing to start with. But my first few weeks, the money I was going to make was if I had a prospect and I could go see them and make a presentation, and ended up doing the steps and the educating them with the concept, and end up writing up a policy, an application, etc. All that stuff, as you know, in the insurance business, there's a lot of moving parts. So what I did, I went and when I noticed that there were 3 or 4, 5, 6, 7 forms that had to be filled out in those applications, and had the cover sheets and bank draft cards, stuff I didn't even know what it was. I went into the office and got the assistant to sneak back there and get me a big supply of everything they had. And I went home and got me and Norma, and we went and got paper clips and staple machines, and I stapled up these little packages where everything that I would need would be prepackaged. And I had a big box in my trunk of my car, and I said that had all of my. At the house, I had a little. I couldn't afford a real filing set, so I had a cardboard file box. It had all these things preset, and I'd get a bunch. I'd get a bunch at the first of the week, and I'd put them in the box in the back of my car. And then I'd get 3 or 4, 5 of them that I was going to use that day, and I'd have them all up front. And when I go in to make a presentation, I had my little flip chart. I had presentation, and when it came time to whatever I had to do to make a sale, I had all the forms prepackaged. And then when I did that one, I'd go back to the trunk of my car and get those out. And then when I get home, I'd get stuff out of the file box, put them in the trunk of my car. I had me a little sales format system. I had myself where I did not have to think. It was already packaged. I was just like a machine. I could just, and that's the way I learned it. I had to be. Mm-hmm. And so out of necessity, I searched for and found a system, and I was able to perfect it the only way to go into the largest industry in the world that's traditionally been done in a linear way by sales guys who's quote unquote professional. And here we were going to build sort of an Amway of insurance and mutual funds into this with a bunch of greenies. I knew right quick. Art had the right idea. He just didn't have any system yet. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to bring a bunch of greenies into something, that you're talking about randomness. Hell, that's going to be a lot of randomness there because they're greenies. They don't know nothing. So we had to format it and lay it out there, and that's what caused these 2.5, 3 million people to come into all these industries and build these great companies from scratch. And now they're big, sophisticated guys who make lots of money, know a lot. I'd put them up against anybody, but they didn't start that way. I started out as just a little greenie. Didn't know what I was doing, and just trying to. But I had to have. I knew I had to have some kind of little system to save me as a sales guy. It's hard enough being a salesman, with all the you were out there being a salesman. Just keeping up with the paperwork is most people can't even do.
Right. Exactly. Wow, I love this podcast. It's really opened up. Not that it opened up my mind. I hear you talk about these things over the last few years, but every time you go deeper into it, new epiphanies come about. And we've got to have clarity in what we want to do. We've got to be able to put it on paper, and then we have to systematize it in order to be able to be duplicatable, repeatable, and scale. And so, getting lessons from Hubert Humphrey, it's really a luxury on this. How many people you said you have come through the system, Hubert? Maybe 2.5, 3 million.
Well, in that first 14 years from the time we started, January of '78, with A.O. Williams, was only 30 active people in his company out of the original group he had. From that little group, start right there and everything. We brought in 1.5 million recruits in that 14 years before I left and started the next company. And Art sold the company, by the way. So we had 1.5 million recruits and 10 million policies, term policies were sold. Beat Prudential. We just dominated the industry out there, and we did it with that system, compounded it into that, and obviously out of that 1.5 million recruits there was about 400,000 got licensed, about 150,000 became serious, consistent part-time producers, and over 125,000 of them got a securities license. And so we ended up with a core group of 70,000, 80,000 people that could sell insurance, securities, but both of them, they were mostly builder types. They were building teams, and if sales coming through internal consumption, you'd recruit, who you recruited, you sell, they'd get recruits. And our guys learned how to sell to other people too, but we had it down pat to where it was. We were selling dreams, and the rest of the industry was selling insurance in financial services. So they didn't have a chance to compete with them. Ours was a viral business. Everybody wanted to be involved in dream selling and having a dream. Nobody wanted to be in the insurance business. So we were beating them because we were in the right paradigm, doing the right things. Let me add one little element about this builder's mentality. If you go, one, you want to build yourself up to be a good building block. Then you want to build a little team. Then you might want to build a little agency, a little company, a little store, whatever business you're in. Then when I knew I wanted to be bigger, I wanted to be like a little mini Ray Kroc. I wanted to have me some sub-franchisers. I wanted some people to copy me, so I had some people, and they had to copy me. And then as I moved out to Denver and opened up the West and started to send guys out in different areas to replicate what they saw the master copy of they went out. We had a little diagram. They had a little miniature version of what my office looked like in Denver, with how we had the meeting rooms and the little training rooms on the side. I just had them do a smaller scale of it. And when they went out there and they got their first little office, they copied it. They copied just that. And they had to, if I had meetings on Tuesday night, Thursday night, and Saturday morning, they did it. So I had it laid out where they copied steps. I didn't leave anything to chance. Anything that they were supposed to do was there for them to copy. And then I didn't just hope they did it. I went and traveled over those years to all these places. For 3 or 4 or 5 years, I was gone tons and tons of places across the country to inspect, because you can only expect what you inspect. I learned that a long time ago. If you're a building contractor and you got 3 or 4 homes being built, and you don't go around and check how the builders are doing, they ain't no telling what you might get. You might be out of business because your people didn't build it right. So you got to have an accountability in there and an inspection. But I had everything laid out where it was duplicatable. But they had seen and grown up seeing the master copy, so they had something real. It wasn't like they were just looking at something they'd never seen before. They had grown up watching it. Now they had it on paper. They could go duplicate it, and they had me or other leaders like me that were constantly communicating with them, giving them constant course correction to get it fixed. And next thing you know, we end up building offices all across the United States. We end up with literally thousands and thousands and thousands of people out there, and we dominated an industry, built an empire. Today, it's Primerica Financial Services. It's about a $6 billion market cap company. Yeah. Came from that little start.
It's pretty amazing. I mean, from having a builder's mindset and having clarity, now these companies have thousands of employees just to support the massive sales forces that you've built using the same system, and they're using the same system, which is what they bought, right? They bought that system. That's amazing.
And then the second company, World Marketing Alliance, which we sold to Aegon, and it became World Financial Group Transamerica. It sits over there now as a monster deal for the last 25, 30 years. It sits out there too as a second version of it, built on the same model. And today, Hedgeman Group International is being built off that same model. So
So this system has impacted how many millionaires? I mean, I'm looking at the World Financial Group here, by Aegon here. Just we're talking dozens of thousands of just as a sales force, thousands just as a support team, and they're using the same system. So you've touched the lives of millions of people by having a builder's mindset.
Just in the 14 years I was helping Art build A.L. Williams from the ground up. Yeah. And then when I built World Marketing Alliance in that 10 years there, and then built our built everything else from that point forward. Just the parts when I was actively involved in it was 2.5 million people through there. And since we built A.L. Williams and left there in 1991, that company has recruited several million, 7, 8, 9 million people since that time. And when I built WMA, it had the 500,000 that we recruited. And then from the time that we sold it, 2001, in that next roughly 20 years, It's had a few million people. So if you go out there and look, that's probably from what we started, from when I was involved in it to what it continued with that system, and all those businesses out there. There's at least 12 to 15 million people that have joined those companies in this 30, 35, 40-year period of time. And that's in the financial services business where you got to get a license. You got a regulated industry. It's not lotions and potions and other small ticket items. And fortunes were made. And it was totally new distribution that the industry had never seen before. They used to have this so-called quote unquote professional agent who was out selling. He'd get leads, and they give him leads, and they give him territories. And of course, you came up in the sales business with the companies that were basically looking for linear sales guys who could be good, aggressive salespeople. Ours was a different model, and that's what you can do. You can be a disruptor, just like Ray Kroc was a disruptor in his day. Bill Gates was a disruptor on how technology was developed. You got like Starbucks changed the way coffee was distributed. Everything's a disruption out there today.
Right.
And you look at companies today being born Elon Musk and his SpaceX is changed the way spaceships and travel to the moon can be accomplished. A whole different model, a whole different way. That's what we were.
There's always disruptions going on, but what's very interesting to me is that this system you've built, it doesn't get old, and it works, and it's even better now than ever before because of the opportunity that exists out there.
You look at step one, prospecting, and step two, contacting. Back when we started, it was kneecap to kneecap, person to person. And if you wanted to talk to somebody long distance, you could do a long distance telephone call, or you could send mail, snail mail. Then over the years now we've got technology. We can reach contacts. The prospect list can be expanded in ways we never dreamt of because of social media.
That's what I mean.
Contacting funnels and so forth can help you do the approach or contact. And look at what you can Zoom and all these things you can do now with making your presentations.
And that's why it's the same system. It's just that now it's turbocharged with the technologies that are out there, and it creates the biggest opportunity ever in history. In the largest industry in the world, has changed my life, and I've seen it change the lives just in the last 3 years. I've seen people come in and do $4 or $5 million in a single year. That's unheard of in any other industries.
That's right.
That is as serious as the financial services industry is. So
to have that builder's mindset,
right?
I'll leave them on this part for me. To be a builder and have that builder's mindset is so much more not easier, but simpler. Easier, but simpler, and highly probable and highly possible to be a successful builder in our world today, because one, we got so many more people. Here, there's 100 million more people out there than when we first started back in the early 70s or late 70s. There's 100 million more people in this country, and the world is open. We have different tools, so many more companies that are creative, so many more products that are conducive to what we need. Everything is so much better today than it ever was to be a successful builder. So everything we've done in the past, while it was phenomenal, is small potatoes compared to what we can become in the future, because it's so much better today. And we just went through a pandemic out there, and most of our people who were doing stuff face-to-face, live meetings, one-on-one, going into people's homes, which is the way it's traditionally been done, selling dreams and holding these group meetings. Well, all of a sudden we shifted where it became 100% Zooms and technology with presentations to consumer, closing sales, field training new recruits, having recruit sessions where we're having large crowds of people being invited to hear the story and converted on there, and then big training sessions. We've even had our conventions on it. So we just sped up. We built it not only at dream speed and system speed, but now we're building it at web speed. So everything it's so much easier to be a builder. All you got to do is have a desire to be a builder, know how to be a recruiter's mentality, which will feed you the material to build with.
Well, that also ties into with everything you just mentioned, how you compress time and just compress activity by being able to utilize all these technologies on a system. But the topic was obviously why entrepreneurs ought to have a builder's mindset. You cannot build unless you have a builder's mindset and you have that clarity. So hopefully the message was clear. And before we wrap it up, can't forget to mention the sponsor of the show, which is Hegemon Group International. Without their support, this podcast probably wouldn't be possible. So I want you to please check out their opportunity, what they have to offer by going to HCIopportunity.com. If you are looking for the best vehicle, the best opportunity in the largest industry in the world today, you have to check out what Hegemon Group International has for you. HCIopportunity.com is the page you should check out right now and get involved and conquer your future. Hubert, tomorrow we have a great topic, which lines up perfectly with what we've been talking the last between yesterday and today. So we'll see you tomorrow, sir.
Mañana.
Hasta mañana.
Warning, this podcast may change the way you think about business, entrepreneurship, and money forever. The Conquistador Podcast was created for dreamers, entrepreneurs, and leaders who want to conquer their future. To be an epic entrepreneur, you must adopt the right mental paradigms as well as master the art of selling, marketing, and finance.